let's make the pattern for this dress. So the first thing now will be to mark 1/2 inch at the top. 1/2 inch at the top for your shoulder joining. Let that be established from the beginning. And then you mark your vertical measurement. Mark your vertical measurements from that point. So here you mark your chest line. Depending on what your chest line will be, that's the armhole divided by 2. I'm making this dress for a princess, a little princess. So that's why you can see that the measurements will be a bit shorter than yours or smaller than yours. Okay, for the bust point, I have 8 inches, your vertical measurements. Then the half length, you mark your half length for this pattern, and you mark your waist point right here, and then you get your hip length right here. And because the tulle net has doesn't start on the hip line, you just create an extension of about 4 inches. Extension of about 4 inches. And so you're going to mark those points. Just have your lines marked on those points. This tutorial, you can use different fabrics for this tutorial, but make sure you have enough tulle net, okay. It's time to do the horizontal measurement. That's measurements around your body. So you're going to mark the half of your shoulder. You mark it here, and on the chest you bring down that measurement. You bring down the same shoulder measurement on your chest. Okay, now for the bust, you divide your bust by 4, and you're going to have that on your pattern. So here is 24. I'm dividing by 4, that gives me 6. And I'm just going to add 1 inch seam allowance. 1 inch. Okay. Now for the waistline, you divide your waistline by 4, and then you mark that, and you add 2 inches seam allowance. That's 1 inch allowance for the sewing and 1 inch for the darts. Okay. Just bust. Okay, so on the hip line, you're going to have your hip measurements here. You mark that, and you add just 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, and so after that, you put the same measurement of your hip line on the last part, right here, and you're just going to connect with your curve. Okay, so on the chest area, you're going to mark both your armhole and the bust point. Whatever you have on the bust point, you extend it upwards to the chest area. Please don't forget that. You extend it upwards to the chest area. Okay. And so you join your shoulder to your chest line. And once you're done doing that, you're going to create your curve for the armhole. Like this. And this is for the back armhole. So for the front armhole, you want to make it a bit shapy so that there will be no bulge at the front. So you're going to mark 1/2 inch into the chest area. After dividing your armhole by 2, you divide into 2, okay, and you have this here. So you're going to use your French curve to create the curve. and you connect it back here. Okay, and that's that, like that. So now you get your bust span. In order for you to be able to mark your darts on the waistline, connect your bust span and you add half an inch to it, and you have that. So just mark that number of inches. You mark it all the way down, all the way down. You can mark from your bust point, like that. So this is the waistline, and now I'm going to mark half an inch on both sides of the bust, and then you mark, you mark your bust point upwards, and then you mark 4 inches downwards to the waistline. But because this is a small dress, I'm just going to pick my darts, following this exact line. If it was for an adult, then you would have the waist would be far away from the hip. But because this is just for a little girl, I will work with the measurements that I have. But then I know if you are not a beginner, you already know how to pick your dart points on a basic bodice. If you don't know, I'm going to post a link in the description box so that you can see how I've done a basic bodice before, and then you know how to get your bust point. So I'm just going to cut out my pattern now. But before I cut out, remember this is the waistline, the half length. This is the waistline. This is the hip of the child. So on this point, I'm just going to mark you can see now 1 inch below the hip area of the child, 1 inch below. Okay, that's that, because we want to create the semicircles now. And then on the center front, from the center front, you mark 1 inch away from the center front. Okay, and you get the remaining number of inches that is in here is what you mark on this other side. Okay, and then now you also mark 1 inch on the side here. Okay, and so from this point you also mark 1 inch. So now I'm going to create my curve for the semicircles. Look at that. This looks beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to cut out my pattern now. So for my neckline, I want this to be 3 inches for the front. You can decide to do high neck or whichever you choose, and then the width is going to be 5. From here you just create your curve again. Okay, and then I'll create my shoulder slant. For the adult, you can use 1 inch for the shoulder slant, but for this little girl, I'll use half an inch. So I'm going to cut that out as well. Already left half an inch up here for the allowance, shoulder allowance. So it's from that point you mark your ½ inch to cut off on the pattern. Okay. So I'm going to use this to cut my fabric, but before then you're going to slash this center. That's the waistline. or your half length, depending on where you want your joining to be. Yeah. So you're going to slash that center, and we're going to cut our pattern on fabric now. Make sure you pin your pattern to the fabric so that it doesn't shift. You can see now that I've used my pattern to cut my fabric, and because of the slash, I had to leave ½ inch at the top of each pattern on the fabric, that I will use in joining them together. Okay, and then also at the semicircles, I left ½ inch around the pattern. You see, ½ inch around the pattern, ½ inch around the pattern, but don't leave any ease at the center. Just round the semicircles. So use this to cut your back block, but ensure that you put your 1 inch or 1.5 inches zipper allowance at the back block. So now I've turned, I've used my lining. First off, I picked the darts on the lining and on the fabric separately, and then I turned the neckline of the fabric and the lining, and so you can see the concealed sewing. And so on both sides I also concealed that, and you can see for the lower part I created notches around the semicircle. I also did my darts on both lining and fabric, and then I joined them separately. Okay, and I sewed around the semicircles because I want the edges to be very neat by the time I put my net, my tool net. So you're going to iron this. You just give it a good press, and once you're done, this is what you have. You're going to give it a good press, so you can see that this looks very beautiful. Okay, so at this point I'm going to join the back to the front. I'll join it like this. Okay, the first thing I'll do is to first hold the shoulders together like this. The shoulder, I'll hold fabric to fabric, and then I will turn it with the back lining from the back like this. I'm going to turn it this way. Okay, so you have the 4 together now. So you're going to sew your shoulder. So when you do this like this, your shoulder, the joining will not show at all. So I'm going to sew this down. Once you've done this, you're going to give it a good press, and then now at this point you shape in your armhole. And then you're going to take your bias strip. You're going to take the bias strip to, please use a matching color, bias strip to finish the edge of your armhole. So now you see that I've been able to fix my zipper. I've joined the upper bodies to the lower bodies. I actually joined it this way so that when I fix my lining, it would cover the mess. So now at this point, I'm going to take my tool net. I have about 5 yards of tool net here, and then I'm going to fold from selvage to selvage. That's from top down. I'm going to fold from selvage to selvage. So I'll hold that together. Hold selvage to selvage together, and then I'm going to sew round the edge. Okay, this way. I'm going to be making gathering stitches. I'm going to be making gathering stitches to ensure that this whole 5 yards, comes into these semicircles. So you take this to your machine and you keep sewing. You just keep gathering till you go round all circles and get back here. So I'm pleating. Okay, I'm gathering, I'm pleating, I'm gathering. I'm gathering my stitches now. And you keep sewing round. So just look at this. This is beautiful. I've been able to pleat into the cones, into the semi. Okay. So roughly about 10 yards of tulle net has gone into this part. So what I'm going to do now is to take my lining and sew it round. I'm going to sew it round this as well, so that it won't be transparent, by the time you wear. Now I'm going to turn this out. Look at this. And then I'm going to run my lining. My lining is going to come from the upper bodice and face downwards. So I've cut a long strip for my lining, and then I'm going to place it against the upper bodice like this. That's the waist joining. So I'm going to pleat this round the waist joining, and I'll sew it down. And once I'm done with that, I'll mark the length of my dress. The full length of my dress is what I'm going to mark all the way down, and then I will trim off the remaining tulle net at that point. So you can see that I've joined to the waistline, and then I sewed the zipper allowance. Okay, so at this point you're just going to fold in the tip here, okay, like this, and you sew it inside. You sew it to the zipper allowance. You fold this as well to the zipper allowance, so that you can have a neat finishing. And so you have this sewn across. And so once you're done with that, your dress is ready. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos. Thank you. Bye.